So, ayun guys, good afternoon. So, here I am again presenting you the Permanganometry. Okay? So, kanina, di ba nga, so, nagkaroon tayo ng problem in the morning. So, I am here recording our lecture which is entitled your Permanganometry. So, Permanganometry, it is defined, okay, as one of the techniques used in quantitative analysis in chemistry. Okay, it is a redox reaction or titration and involves the use of permanganates and used to measure the amount of analyte present in unknown chemical samples. Okay, so in permanganometry, it involves, okay guys, two steps. Okay, so it is namely first, the titration of the analyte with potassium permanganate solution, and then, of course, the standardization of potassium solution with standard sodium oxalate solution. Okay, so itong permanganometry, of course, it deals with your potassium permanganate. So, potassium permanganate, okay, it is also known as your mineral chameleon. Okay? So, potassium permanganate is probably the most widely used of all volumetric oxidizing agents. It is powerful oxidant or powerful oxidizing agent. Okay? So, in a laboratory, sample assay for permanganometry, okay, so standard solution is, syempre, your potassium permanganate. Next po, your primary standard will be your oxalic acid or your sodium oxalate. Sodium oxalate. Syempre, okay, ang indicator nyo dito is wala. Okay, kasi nga po, ang inyong potassium permanganate is a self-indicating reagent. So, sample assays, okay, dito po is for the direct titration, hydrogen peroxide. Pag indirect naman, cherry juice, formalic acid, okay, precipitated manganese, and titanium dioxide sa indirect. While sa residual titration, okay, sodium nitrite. Okay, so, ay yung mga sinabi natin dyan, sample assays, is yung mga gagamitin natin. Okay, for example, assay of hydrogen peroxide, so assay of cherry juice. So, ang gamit natin doon, direct titration for the hydrogen peroxide or H2O2. Okay, kapag naman for the precipitated manganese or titanium dioxide, naka-indirect tayo. While in the sodium nitrite, ang gamit natin doon is your residual titration. Okay? So kapag so guys, kasi 'di ba, ang direct titration, okay, 'di ba nasabi na natin, okay? So the basic, okay, in all types of titration. While in indirect titration, okay, so the indirect method of permanganate oxidation, ito guys, ini-employed with those compounds that can be converted through chemical reaction, okay, to an equivalent amount of oxalate, which in turn can be quantitatively oxidized by permanganate. Okay? In the assay for the malic acid, ayun nga yung example natin kanina, malic acid content of cherry juice, the malic acid is converted to an equivalent amount of calcium salt, which is now converted to insoluble calcium oxalate. The oxalate is then liberated and oxidized with your permanganate. Okay? So, ayun po yung purpose or ayun yung definition ng indirect titration methods here in your permanganometry. While your residual, okay, titration method naman sa inyong sodium nitrite, okay, so the residual titration in the official assays with potassium permanganate solution has two types. Okay, so first, okay, titration in which an excess of standard potassium permanganate solution is employed to oxidize a substance, and the amount in excess is determined by the reaction, okay? So, dito sa type 1, okay, meron din siyang determined by the reduction of the two. First is excess standard oxalic acid or number 2, excess ferrous ammonium sulfate and back titration with more standard potassium permanganate. So, di ba meron na tayong una, yung titration in which an excess standard potassium permanganate solution is employed to oxidize a substance, okay? Now, yung number 2 naman, titration, okay, in which an excess of standard oxalic acid solution is added to the substance and the excess oxalic acid is titrated with standard potassium permanganate. Okay, so ayon direct, indirect, and residual titration methods here in your permanganometry. Okay? Now, reducing agents. Okay? So, reducing agents, this is the substance that undergoes oxidation and causes the reduction of the other agent. Okay? So, example of that is your active metals, such as your sodium, magnesium, aluminum, and zinc. Okay? These active metals is called your electropositive elements or compounds. While While in the other hand, okay, your oxidizing agents, substance that undergoes reduction and causes the oxidation of the other reaction. So example naman nito guys is compounds with usually large oxidation states, okay? Such as your permanganate, chromate, and dichromate, ions, as well as nitric acid, perchloric acid, and sulfuric acid. So, ito naman guys, dito sa mga oxidizing agents, na example, ang tawag naman sa kanila is yung electronegative elements in a compound or electronegative elements or compounds. So now, we will be going with your permanganate methods. Okay, so permanganate methods. So potassium permanganate, okay, can be standardized easily and it retains its concentration over long periods of time, okay, when proper precautions are observed in its preparation and preservation. The reactions of permanganate in solution are rapid. Okay? It also serves as an indicator, your potassium permanganate, as we tackle, okay, sa mga nakaraang meeting. Okay? So, it also serves as an indicator in titration where it is used since a very slight excess permanganate imparts to solution a distinct pink color or pale pink color. Okay? So now, we're going with your preparation and standardization of your potassium permanganate, of your 0.1 and potassium permanganate. So first, okay, dissolve about 3.3 grams of potassium permanganate in 1000 ml of water in a flask. Boil the solution for about 15 minutes. Okay? 15 minutes yan guys, hindi 14. 15 minutes. Insert stopper in the flask. Allow it to stand for at least 2 days and filter through asbestos. So, makikita nyo sa baba yung pinaka-equation niya. Okay? So, ayan. Any organic matter kasi guys that may be present in distilled water is decomposed by potassium permanganate. Okay, so consequently kasi, after solution of the permanganate is affected, the liquid is allowed to stand for 2 days to ensure, okay, take note of this, allowed to stand for 2 days to ensure completion of the decomposition reaction. The solution, ngayon na, is then filtered through asbestos dahil para ma-remove yung all traces of manganese dioxide, which, if present, act as a catalyst to promote the formation of more manganese dioxide at the expense of permanganate ion. So, ayan. So, formation of permanganate as a reduction product, okay? And the neutral solution may be represented dyan sa baba. Ayun yung nakikita nyong equation. Kung makikita nyo, nagkaroon ng reduction. Okay? Now, for the standardization, so standard solution as follows. So, first, weigh accurately about 200 milligram of sodium oxalate. So, previously dried at 100 degree centigrade to constant weight, okay, and dissolve it in 250 ml of water. Add 7 ml of sulfuric acid, heat to about 70 degrees Celsius, and then slowly add the permanganate solution from a burette with constant stirring until a pale pink color which persists for 15 seconds is produced. Okay, the temperature of the titration should not be less than 60 degree Celsius. So, kung makikita niyo dyan, ayun po, okay? Yung pinaka dapat makikita nating pale pink, okay? So, minsan, ayan, mga medyo matataas ang grade, okay? Ito yung pinaka last support, pinagbibigyan natin yan, okay? Kasi medyo pale pink pa naman yan, or pale pink, violet, something. Nagva-violet, okay? So, minsan, ang nakukuha ng estudyante is number 3. Okay, number 3. Now, we'll be going with but before that, okay, so, um, explain natin, while kailangan ng sulfuric acid, ganito, ganyan. Okay, dito sa standardization. Okay, so, di ba, standardization, so titrate the mixture by adding the permanganate solution, okay, from a glass-stoppered glass burette with continuous stirring of the titration mixture until a drop of burette instead of the lowest part. Using the first sample as a preliminary run, titrate two other portions of oxalate in the same manner and base the calculations of the normality upon them. So, sodium oxalate is the best standard to use in the standardization of potassium permanganate. Why? Since it can be obtained in very pure condition. Okay? Sufficient sulfuric acid must be added. Okay? To keep the hydrogen ion concentration reasonably constant throughout the titration, thereby preventing the formation of manganese dioxide and supplying the hydrogen ions used up in the reduction of the permanganate ion. Okay, thus, for every mole of permanganate ion reduced, 8 moles of hydrogen ion is required. Okay, octet rule. As shown, okay, sa mga previous or dito sa ating sa standardization experiment. Okay? So, when permanganate solutions are diluted to an exact normality, distilled water from permanganate solution should be used to avoid the introduction of organic matter. Okay? So, potassium permanganate solution prepared as, tawag dito, directed will retain its value for a long time. If it is protected from sunlight, syempre guys, kada magtatitrate tayo, yung burette natin may nakabalot dyan. Okay, may nakabalot dyan Manila paper or anything na magko-cover do sa burette. Kailangan kasi kapag potassium permanganate na, alam na ng lahat kapag potassium permanganate experiment na. Tinataklo ba na yung chem lab ng mga dyaryo para walang magtagos na sunlight. It is best, however, okay, to standardize the solution from time to time. Solution withdrawn from the stock bottle should never be returned to it. So, wala nang balikan to. Kapag inilabas mo na, okay, wala nang balikan. Solution of oxidizing agent should never be titrated with burettes since the oxidizing agent attacks the rubber and the potassium permanganate titer decreases. So, Kaya yung ating mga, kasi may mga burette guys na ginagamit is rubber stopper. Okay, so sa atin hindi. Parang plastic yung gamit natin. Kasi nga, for example, andito nga yung mangyayari, okay? So magkakaroon na effect dun sa ating experiment. Okay, so possible yun magkamali. Okay, since nga ganun nga yung nangyayari. The burette used to measure the permanganate solution should be washed out immediately after use to prevent the formation of a deposit of manganese on the burette wall. So, hugas-hugas lang. So, ayun po. Ito yung ating kailangan makita, yung endpoint. Then, now, we will be proceeding with your assay of hydrogen peroxide solution. So, procedure, pipe 2 ml of your hydrogen peroxide solution into a suitable flask containing 20 ml of water. Add 20 ml of diluted sulfuric acid and titrate with 0.1 and potassium permanganate. So, yung ginawa natin kanina, each ml of 0.1 potassium permanganate is equivalent to 1.01 milligram of hydrogen peroxide or your H2O2 or your agua oxinada. So the titration must be conducted in acid solution, okay, to maintain reasonably constant hydrogen ion concentration as it is explained doon kanina during the standardization ng potassium permanganate, okay? The pink color of permanganate is distinct. When a drop in excess of that required to oxidize all the samples has been added, okay? Although the agua oxinada or your hydrogen peroxide generally act as an oxidizing agent and is reduced by water, in this assay, it reduces the potassium permanganate while it is being oxidized to oxygen. Again, guys, although the hydrogen peroxide, okay, or your agua oxinada generally act as an oxidizing agent and is reduced to water, okay, in this assay, it reduces the potassium permanganate while it is being oxidized to oxygen. Okay? So for example, the data na makuha natin, okay, the volume of the titran, okay, is yung nakuha, na-consume natin is 36 ml. Okay? Then the normality of the titran is 0.1 N. Ngayon, yung volume ng analyte na inad natin kanina, I guess it's 2 ml. Okay? Now, we will be doing your calculation. Okay? The molecular weight of your hydrogen peroxide is 34 grams per mole. Now, we will now be computing or calculating the mole equivalent of the analyte. So, the formula for the mole equivalent is the molecular weight divided by the factor times 1,000. So, the molecular weight of the hydrogen peroxide is 34 divided by 2 times 1,000. Okay? So, bakit 2? Ano ba ang ating chemical formula ng inyong hydrogen peroxide? It is H2O2. Meron kang dalawang hydrogen transferable ion. So, 2 yun. Okay? So, ang magiging answer for this one is 0.017 milli equivalent. Now, we will be computing your percentage of the hydrogen peroxide solution. So, ano bang formula yung gagamitin natin dito? Okay? So, hintayin natin matapos magsulat. So, percent purity. Okay, yun pa rin yung ginagamit natin. Diba? ml or volume times the normality times the milli equivalent. Okay? Divided by the sample, which is in grams or samples in weight. Okay, grams yon times 100. Okay? Or, the other formula is percent purity. Okay, so the volume, okay, of the titrant times the normality times the FAQ divided by the sample now in volume naman, in ml. times 100. So, ang gagamitin natin dyan is yung pangalawa. Okay? Why? Kasi ang volume ng analyte nyo or yung given data ng analyte nyo is naka-ml, naka-volume. Okay? So, therefore, yun yung gagamitin natin. So now, proceed na tayo sa computation. Naririnig niyo? Pinarinig ko yung nagbubukas. Sorry. So now, 36 ml, okay, ayun yung volume ng titrant, times 0.1 n normality. Okay? Times, ano nga MEQ natin? 0.017. Okay, now, ilang ml yung nilagay natin? Ilang ml ng analyte? 2 ml. Times 100. Now, ang magiging answer natin ngayon is 3%. Okay? So, ayan po yung percent ng hydrogen peroxide doon sa ating titration. Okay? Doon sa pag-assay natin. Ilang percent ba? Kasi, sa hydrogen peroxide, guys, we have different titration or we have hindi pala different titration. We have different percentage of your agua oxinada. Kung makikita nyo sa mga mercury drugs or sa mga small boutiques or local boutiques, okay, makikita nyo meron diyang red color or blue color. Okay, so 6% or 3% hydrogen peroxide, it can be used for the wounds. Okay, so iba, then yung iba, okay, is ginagamit na for the medical use. Okay, so ayan. So, thank you. Thank you for attending the class. So, I hope may natutunan kayo and I hope kahit pa paano na-save natin yung day. Maraming salamat for watching the video and take care always po.